Okay. I'm tempted to start with a Star Wars reference that I know Oz won't know, but I do feel as if I'm meeting Obi-Wan and Darth Vader right now, the sort of like first student, the Padawan of Oz. At least from the article I came out, I didn't realize, Omar, that you're Oz's first student. You started all of this. Is that true?
I wouldn't call him first student, but he really was the inspiration for Bradfield, like the Omar success story. I mean, before Omar, I was totally skeptical of the bootcamp model as an entry point for software engineers to get into the industry. And after Omar, I was like, yeah, let's do it. This is how it's going to be. Obviously, the best way to approach one's career as a software engineer is to start as quickly as possible, start writing code, and then take a kind of top-down approach to computer science where you learn what you need to as you go, with the motivation of applying that to real work. Of course, you should do that and not like learn for 4 years in a traditional environment, postponing the idea of applying that to work and then like never touch computer science ever again after you start working. Like that's just the total wrong approach. So anyway, it was a bit flip for me to have the pleasure of working with Omar. To be clear, not the first student of Bradfield, but like the proto student, the pre-student.
Yeah, well, the pleasure was mine. I was always very motivated to learn and grow fast. And then I found mentorship and I tried to extract the most out of it deliberately. So I think that I got more out of it than you all.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know about that, but maybe as quick context for people who have not read this article, we describe Omar in the article. I describe Omar in the article as he's kind of the quintessential, in my mind, the first person I think of who has been able to consistently apply himself to the kind of learning objective that he had, and through that consistency over even like a relatively short period of time in the context of one's career, go from just like entry level to having a major impact kind of in a methodical way. So I presented him as a case study of someone who started as a boot camp grad from one of the first boot camp cohorts, and then consistently learned the computer science that he needed, and also obviously other skills that he needed to succeed. But there are special aspects of Omar just beyond, his study routine or whatever. And try to get that across in the article as well. So people listening who haven't read the article, you may want to read it at least.
It's a good article. It's good. I underlined a bunch of things, which are maybe questions for Omar, but probably more so notes for me to reevaluate my own study habits. So Omar, just go ahead.
I wonder if the best way to start, Omar, is to just describe your pre-software engineer life briefly and like what motivated you originally to become a software engineer. Because you're not like a lot of people who end up as software engineers, they know at the age of 12 that that's what they want to do. And they take CS courses in high school because they have good ones. And then they major in CS at the age of, they pick their major at 18 or something. They're very tracked. Yours was another experience, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely not my case. My case was a little bit atypical. I actually did med school. I'm a trained physician. And I was in Spain kind of doing my ophthalmology residency. So my specialty is ophthalmology, like I'm an eye doctor. And it's a 4-year program, and I was like in the third or fourth year. And I started hearing, this is a funny story. I started hearing about kind of Silicon Valley and how, fast companies grow there and all the hype and, people like being very successful. So, I thought to myself, hey, I think I am kind of a smart guy. I'm a doctor and, doctors are important and all that stuff. So I started looking to these websites like of companies to see what they were hiring for. And at that point, I was also doing like an MBA. So I was like, okay, I'm a doctor with this business degree and all that stuff. It's going to be very easy for me to get a job there. And I started going through their job pages. And the only thing that I saw is like, hey, they were only hiring for software engineers. I was like, hey, what is this thing about software engineers that all these companies that are supposed to be like startups that grow very fast in the Silicon Valley, What do they do? Like, so I started to research that area, and one of the startups that I found was the bootcamp, and it was like a bootcamp that said, "Hey, if you come with us and you study for 12 weeks, we're gonna find you a gig as a software engineer." It's like, well, this sounds like fun, affordable.
Wait. But why? Okay, you are on track. You just invested how many years of your life?
And you're
Oh,
living in
totally.
Spain. You're like, what's going on? Why would you leave Spain?
You
That's
got to tell
awesome.
us more about the motivation. You can't just say
Okay.
it sounded fun, like it's a holiday, and then you're going to go back to your ophthalmology residency. Like you're
No,
making a
so
very
okay.
major life decision.
I was in Spain, and at that point, it was like 2010, 2011, 2012, right? And kind of the economical situation was not very hot for Europe in general. And then I started doing some kind of assessment of my future career as an ophthalmologist in Spain, and I started running some numbers, and they were like very basic numbers. I was like looking for, like, I was checking all the physicians, all the ophthalmologists that were being trained in Spain, and I was matching that to the population that we had in Spain and Madrid and different districts. And I basically realized that, like, I was not in a context set up for growth, right? And I wanted to move into a place or into an industry that was more prone for growth. So when I started looking into it, it seemed like kind of software engineer could be one of those industries, and the geolocation of Silicon Valley, more concretely, could be kind of like the hotspot for it, right? So that is what piqued my curiosity into looking for other things outside of healthcare and outside of Spain and Europe. So that's
Can I ask, outside of business too, were you also thinking the MBA? Like, were you trying to parlay that into a job? How did your thinking change on the business side?
Well, on the business side, I was like, well, I have this kind of degree and I can try to make the most out of it. But the thing is that the reality by looking into those job pages really kind of was very explicit and said, hey, like 90% of the thing that we value here is software engineering, right? So at that point, when you get hit with that level of reality, like you have to reassess like where you are and where you want to be. So at that point, it's like, hey, yeah, I can probably pull this off somehow. It's going to be a bit tight, but if I try to explore whether software engineering is like a feasible career for me, probably I would be more set up for success in the long run, right? So I decided to give it a try, and as many things in life, like started as an experiment to see if I liked it or not. And before doing the bootcamp, I did like a trial on my own, and I did a couple of Udacity courses, and I really got very interested on. I think that this is one of the first algo courses in Udacity. I think that this was taught by Peter Norvig. Like it was one of the 4 first courses that were there, like when it was like peak hype of Udacity 2012. And it was done in Python. So I remember I was kind of running through the course and I was taking notes, and I was like, oh, this is actually fun, and I think that I understand it. And I wouldn't say that it came natural, because there are a lot of concepts and a lot of primitives that are not natural, but it definitely was very, very engaging. And once I did that, at the same time I was kind of researching companies in the Silicon Valley, and all of a sudden I found that bootcamp, and it basically lined up everything that I wanted, or at least I wanted to try or experiment with. Right? It's like, okay, I want to move into a different industry that has more of a growth potential. I want to move into a different geolocation that probably has a more growth potential. And I've done this kind of courses on my own, and I think that I've done well so far. So what if I do a 12-week structure like course or plan here that sets me, and that helps me find a gig and see if that works out or not.
But did you burn the boats, basically? Did you have to drop out of the medical program and things to do that 12-week thing, or was it a temporary stint?
No. So I finalized the ophthalmology residency in like June 2012,
Okay.
and that was basically a time in which I should have gone and looked for a job and all that stuff. And it's like, okay, let me take a little bit of time to figure out if software engineering, like if this is something that I like. And for the following like 3 months or so, I did a couple of courses on my own,
Yeah.
and then I found this boot camp, and I wanted to do it that October, but I think it was like the first cohort that they were, no, the second cohort that they were launching in October. But I applied late. It's like, hey, you cannot do it in October. The next one is in January, and I was a bit, bummed for that. But it's like, okay, I'll do it in January. So I applied. I got accepted, and like January 2013 is when I did the 12-week program at the bootcamp, which was the third cohort.
From memory, Dev Bootcamp, the initial cohort they got just by posting on Hacker News. Is that right? Sharif like posted something on Hacker News being like, "Is anyone interested in this idea?"
I think that was the first cohort, and then
is that where you heard about it, or
no? I heard about it. No. At that time, I was less kind of
less online, less on Hacker News,
less online. I was more like on TechCrunch and stuff like that. So I think that I heard it after the first cohort. And then there was an article on TechCrunch, and then that's when I started researching.
Did you have any friends or family members or colleagues who were software engineers?
No. It was just something that I found out and say, okay, let's give it a try. And I gave it a try for a couple of months. It worked out, and then okay, let's try a bit farther. Let's do a real experiment here to see how it goes.
So
yeah, go ahead.
I'm curious to hear about the experience of that first boot camp as well, because I mean, for people who don't know boot camps, like they have evolved at this point. It's been 10 years for some of them, and for the earliest ones, it's been 10 years. And the early cohorts, from what you can hear from people who participate in the early cohorts, are typically very, very different to the most recent cohorts in terms of the size, in terms of the like involvement of the founders or the original instructors, in terms of the people that it selects for. Like, at this point, a lot of the boot camps will take in people who have finished CS degrees, maybe as a major proportion of the class, and we'll give them a kind of finishing school that sets them up to be web developers, let's say. This is very different to the ophthalmologist, like the people from everywhere who have a very different background showing up with a kind of intensity. So I want to get a sense of like, what was that experience like? Who was drawn to that? Like, was it 20 other Omars? And what was the kind of instructional environment like? These days a lot of the boot camps are like lecture heavy. They have instructors who are like spent a fair amount of their time just being instructors, or like graduated from the program and became TAs and then instructors. It's a very
we had a lot of those,
like weirdly structured thing.
Yeah. So no, at that time, there was, first of all, there was a lot of excitement in the environment. Like you could go to the office and everyone was very excited to be there and to be participating on something new, novel that could have a lot of impact that you could feel. And then in terms of kind of like the student, it was a little bit all over the place. Like we had someone from finance, we had a product manager from Google. We had someone that was an expert in Chinese and Japanese, like very, very smart guy. And we have someone that was a teacher. So we had people from very, very different backgrounds. Some of them had coded a little bit on the side, some of them not. But all in all, people like very, very smart and very driven to learn like this kind of job, or this to learn as much as they could in 12 weeks, and then to figure it out. And then in terms of the teachers, like you had people that wanted to take a little bit of a career break. Like for the most part, it was like people that were very senior in their like senior in their software engineering careers, that wanted to take a break, and they were very genuinely motivated to teach and mentor some other people, and they thought that this program was kind of like the future of teaching software engineering, and they wanted to give it a try. And then, obviously, like the founders were very, very much in the office and trying to set the tone and the culture. So that is what I remember for 9 years from 9 years ago, and that is exactly where I met Miles. He was an instructor there at the bootcamp, and Miles is the person that referred me to Oz.
So before we get to, I mean, we can talk about that if you like, but what the main story that I need to make sure that we get out of you is Amada. So tell us, set us up for that. Why you were interested in this particular company and what it took for you as maybe everyone who's interested in Amada, but a bootcamp grad in particular, to be interviewed.
Which company?
I don't know this story. Which one?
Amada Health.
Oh, Omar Health. Okay. This is a good story. So, okay, so I finished the bootcamp, and then it's like, okay, I finished this thing, and I just need to make sure if I can find a job or not. So I made like this huge list of companies that actually did something that I think it was very smart at that time. Like I was subscribed to some of the letters, so I basically tracked every company that had just raised money, because I was thinking, hey, if they raise money, they probably have money to hire new people, right?
To spend on you.
I spent on me, right?
Yeah.
On keeping up with my education. So I made this huge list of companies that I wasn't going to target. And obviously I was going to target companies in the healthcare sector, because there's where I felt I had an edge because of my past background. And it's 2013, and I started emailing a lot of companies. Most of them don't reach back. And I'm there in my room, because I was renting a room at the time. And one of the companies that I was emailing or trying to get in touch is Amada Health, and they were doing diabetes. And I was getting a little bit anxious because I was not getting responses. So I was there in my room. I was like, what the heck? I'm going to get the bike. I'm going to go to their offices. I'm going to show up, and I'm going to see if I can get an interview there. So that's what I did. I got the bike. I went to their offices. I basically knocked on the door. It was like, hey, this is Omar. I just sent you an email like 2 hours ago. I'm very excited about what you guys are trying to do, and I want you guys to interview me. So there was an HR person there. It's like,
the way that I remember the story, sorry to interrupt, but the way that I remember the story is that they actually sent a reply, a rejection to your email that you just never got.
You didn't see.
I didn't get it. I didn't get it because I was writing to the office, right? So I was writing to their office. While I was writing to the office, they sent me an email like, no, sorry, we're not going to interview you. But I showed up. But this is interesting, because I showed up. HR, very, very, very nice people. And then the engineering manager was there, and like, well, you're here. We rather interview you. So I got the interview, even though they rejected me while I was driving. And this was the worst interview ever, right? Like, we did pair programming. I was completely unprepared. I claimed that I knew Backbone and all that stuff. So the only
for the
thing
kids out there, Backbone is like one of the many pre-React attempts at some kind of structured JavaScript programming.
Yeah. So the only thing that I got right on the 45-minute interview that we're doing pair programming is like some CSS stuff. So and I was proud about it. But then when I got home, I was like, oh shit, like this is never gonna happen again, right? So I bought a book, and then I studied like beginning to end. And for the following interviews, I was much, much more prepared than
I was going to ask this about the boot camps. Did you feel as if your experience was geared towards interview prep at all? Because I think I was late 2015 when I went through my boot camp, and interview prep was this sort of like undercurrent of everything we were doing, where every day we did at least one toy problem lead code style thing in the mornings. And then the last week was like fully dedicated to that. Was that at all part of that first cohort?
No,
Yeah.
like it was an afterthought. It was like,
Yeah.
no, you guys are gonna have the enough tools in the toolbox to figure it out. And it may take you a couple of attempts to figure out, but you will eventually figure out. That was a little bit like the vibe that we had at that time.
Idealistic.
Very, very idealistic. Yeah, it was that part of the cycle.
I love that worked out for you though. I mean, not that particular interview, but the idealism that you brought of like, I'll just show up and say, hey, I'm Omar.
Yeah. It is true that the interview didn't end up well, but there were a lot of learnings from that interview, and I feel that what I remember is that interview was kind of like turning a corner for me. It's like, okay, now I know how I need to go prepared to the interviews, and it was a completely different story after that one.
That
I have a
reminds me, I guess. Sorry.
It just reminds me of my own experience where I was interviewing at Minerva, where a buddy of mine worked, and there was another student of Oz's there, Jason Ben, and I interviewed with Jason, and the interview did not go well. And he was just like, dude, I like you. You are not ready for this at all. You should like walk out of this interview now. It was like in the first like 10 minutes, he could tell. And he's like, we can interview again next week, whatever. And I was like, no, I'm ready. Let's do this. Did it. The interview was terrible. And he basically did the equivalent of like sliding a business card across. He's like, you should talk to Oz and Miles.
Yeah.
Good. And then
that's how you heard about us?
Through Jason.
Oh, what a great interview to
Yeah.
We're all here today thanks to that failed interview. That's fantastic.
Yes.
I had no idea about that.
Yeah.
I was going to say that it reminds me of the thing that happened a few hours ago of the Starship blowing up. Did you guys watch that?
I watched the last 10 seconds.
But I mean, so like there is this audacious, I mean, not as audacious as Omar on his bike, but this audacious attempt to make the world's largest ever rocket. And they made the thing go up, like amazing. They launched the thing. It did everything that they wanted for some period of time and then started failing in ways that, they couldn't predict the ways that it was going to fail. And no one's like, it's not like they were trying to send the thing to Mars today. It's obviously a test flight. It's designed to detonate when they press the button, and they press the button after minutes. I have no idea if they were expecting it to be after 30 seconds or 10 minutes or something, but it was like a thing that ended with an explosion, which along the way they learned a ton. And now they're going to over all that information for months, and then they're going to launch again. Like that's just the way that you have to do it. And if you're worried about the ship blowing up, like you're just never going to try anything.
Or the message is make sure you sort of sign your deals with other governments to transport their things into space in that first 3.5 minutes. Right? That's the other takeaway.
Just let go of the satellite and come back.
Yeah, it's like, well,
yeah, I mean, the reason I'm thinking about it is because the news reports are all like spaceship blew up, but they're meant to be successful test flight of rocket leading to information about how to launch the world's largest rocket, just like an amazing accomplishment. But the people get this. I mean, the world is telling them that what happened here is the rocket blew up, and I feel like there's a similar kind of response to bad news or rejection from interview or something, where people are like, I don't want to deal with that rejection. Whereas the approach that you need to take is like, well, I'm interviewing for literally my first software engineering job, or I'm just trying to do this ambitious thing, and I have an expectation that people are going to say no at some point, and I need to expedite the process of getting information and developing myself and figuring out what I need to learn or do, and I should like just embrace that, not intentionally fail, obviously, but embrace the process of learning and expecting to have my rocket ship blow up a few times. So I love, like, I very frequently think about Omar on the bike, because there are a lot of people who come to me saying, I feel like I'm not ready to interview yet. And this is whether it's for their first job or like they're 5-10 years into their careers and they're trying to level up. And they're like, oh, I need to do more of this prep. and like, what's my process and which companies do I talk to first and whatever. And I'm like, you are over prepared. You are underactive. What you need to do is get on your push bike, show up at these companies and ask for an interview. Just
But
like,
it's scary, Oz. No, I think maybe the guidance then is don't go to your number one top choice right away.
sure, yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
for sure.
there's that kind of tactical thing as well. But like, the main thing I want to do is say, expect rejection. Treat this as more of a numbers game. You know, if there's a company that you're really committed to, sure, like, leave that towards the end. But the main failure mode is people not showing up enough, like not asking enough, not reaching out to enough people, not putting themselves out enough, like not attempting things that they're bound to fail.
It also just, this story feels so anachronistic now, because I don't know what you do in this post-COVID virtual world. Who's manning the office of that company, and are they prepared to give you a software engineering interview now, if there's even anyone there? It's just, it's kind of adorable, the story.
Look, I mean, maybe they're not going to give you an interview right there, but then they're going to give you a business card or the LinkedIn information, and you're going to persist.
Okay, good.
You never know.
Omar, at that point, one other lens, if you're comfortable sharing, but like, did you have a family or anything? Sometimes I feel like when people take these big risks, they're in their early 20s and they've got nothing on their plate, etc. And if you have a family, it's too late. So where were you in terms of your other important things in your life?
No, at that point I was married and we had a baby, and yeah, so yeah, we, like, while I was kind of experimenting my kind of like the boot camp, and then figuring out a job and all that stuff. My wife still was in Madrid with my daughter, but as soon as I got my first gig, I brought them over, and we continued the journey.
Cool.
Yeah.
No, it's good to know that you still, like, risk taking is still possible.
Yeah, risk taking. Yeah, it's, you have to be more obviously tactical, and understand the boundaries and where you can push and where you cannot push. Everyone has their own personal situation, but yeah, there's always room for a bit of risk taking here and there.
When you got your first job, Omar, which, sadly not Amada, and not yet Vita, where we work together, but when you got your first job, what degree of expectation did you have that you'd have to keep learning and keep investing in yourself? Like, did Dev Bootcamp set you up like as a lifelong beginner, as they talk about? Were you thinking that this is just the start of a learning journey, or how did you feel about like what you had to learn?
I knew I was very much behind on my understanding of computer science, right? And I don't remember anything particular from the boot camp. Like, if anything, I remember myself understanding what was my situation compared to other peers, right? Like, we had some other people in the company that had been studying for 4 years in a classic computer science program, and I was not there. So I was very inherently motivated to continue learning and improving and getting better. And it was very obvious because I was doing the job, and sometimes like very easy stuff for other people was very, very difficult for me and challenging. And it's not because I didn't get something, or it's the only thing is that I had never been exposed to it. And once I got exposed to it, it became easy. So I became very comfortable with not knowing a lot of things. There we go. I became very comfortable
here's my
with
baby making a cameo. Hi, TV.
Hello.
Sorry, Omar.
No worries. So I became very comfortable not knowing a lot of things and being very, very aware that I was very behind on a lot of things. And I made like a very deliberate effort to continue learning and continue growing. And
what did that deliberate effort look like at that point?
So at that point, one of the things that I did is Miles, who is a common friend, was one of the teachers in the bootcamp. And I reached out and say, hey, Miles, like, I have my first gig in the industry. Like things are going pretty well, I would say, but I feel that I'm behind in very basic concepts. Do you mind if we meet like every Sunday for an hour or so and we talk about stuff? Like I'll come up with stuff that I want to talk about. Like it could be like databases because I had a problem setting a database locally. It could be some sort of JavaScript that I don't understand how to do. It could be some sort of thing that came through my mind and I don't know if I'm thinking in the right lens or not. And he was like, yeah, okay, Omar, we can meet every Sunday for 30 minutes or an hour, whatever you need. And then we can work through those cases that you bring. So, that's how I kind of kept being on the loop with someone senior that I respected a lot at the time. Still respect, but respected as as a powerhouse of computer science knowledge.
So Omar, this is a great, in my opinion, idea and kind of obvious in a way. And you're literally the only person I've heard of who finished a boot camp and thought, oh, I will engage one of the instructors to meet with me weekly, even after I have a job. Like, hey, Charlie, have you heard of anyone else who's done that?
No, absolutely not. I thought I was like, I'm free. Let me go continue my life. I didn't think that I knew I was missing things. I think I assumed that would happen naturally in the job, which was the wrong assumption.
Yeah, I wonder if that's the thing. I mean, I was just going to ask Omar, why do you think you do that and nobody else does that or has done that? Like, obviously, Bradfield now exists. So a lot of people show up at our door maybe a year or two after they've graduated looking to continue their education. And obviously people buy books and go to conferences and do these things. But like, it's a very direct approach to say, I will engage one of the instructors to continue my education. What do you think drew you to do that and doesn't draw other people?
Well, the thing is that when I started working at HealthTap, which was the first gig that I had in the industry, I realized that like more than 50%, like 70% of the job was really understanding how the environment was set up, like how to run the database, how to deploy, like making sure that the script was correct. But it was very particular to the company in that point in time. And it had nothing to do with like general understanding of computer science or software engineering, right? And I was having like some basic questions around, I don't know, like I remember sometime I started to become a little obsessed with performance in the web client and stuff like that. But there were some basic things that I could not answer. Or it was difficult for me to comprehend, like, an end-to-end request of an API call, like where's the latency? Where can I check the latency? I don't know. Those are things that I remember that I had questions about. And obviously, like, in the workplace, like there's usually no one there to kind of like answer those questions if there's no business need. And that's why I reached out. It's like, hey,
I have a theory, which is I think your medical background, you are used to, like, there's the surface level of seeing symptoms and detecting the symptoms and then figuring out the correct remedy. And maybe that's the first layer of the onion that many people in your job, you'll figure out how to hopefully detect the problems and solve them. But you came at this from a medical mind where you're like, okay, what's causing that? Is there some process that's related that is causing this? What's the root cause? I feel like maybe, and this is me projecting based on your background, that you had this training that from the medical side led you to be curious to understand how things are connected and what was going on underneath the surface. That's what I'd like.
Software engineers are meant to do that too. Like we're meant to be good at debugging. Like that's diagnostics for software systems.
Yeah,
but nobody does that level of meta diagnosis of like, oh, why am I not able to get answers to my questions and like what's the direct? That's an Omar thing. That's
okay. No, that's fair.
Then you also know Miles, Oz, and he this at that point when I was kind of like starting my software engineering job, there was like this notion that it was like the right way of doing things within software engineering or a better way to do things, right? And Miles very opinionated about how to do things, how to architect systems, and all that stuff. And like, being able to go to someone like Miles and that had like a strong opinion about how to build a good system will also, really help guide what are the things that I need to learn or double click in.
So what kind of thing do you remember anything that you learned from Miles specifically, or like what was the focus of some of your conversations?
I don't know. I think that like he got me hooked up with functional programming. I think that he was very big into functional programming. So then I started reading like this book that I really enjoyed, like the functional JavaScript. I have it there, and I started working through those problems and all that stuff. And it was pretty amazing to see how you can get a language like JavaScript that at that point was like jQuery and Backbone and all that stuff, and you could do like functional programming and use it in a different way, not use classes, which were very like cumbersome like at that time. And he also gave very good recommendations about some books that I started reading. So those are the types of kind of conversations and engagement that we had back in the day.
And then is HealthTap still around? I presume it's not around.
I think they're still around. I think that they're still around.
It's kind of funny to talk about these startups. Amada as well. I don't know do you know what state Amada is in? At some point, they were like the next big thing, and then I don't know. You could tell me they went public, or you could tell me they went bust. And
okay. I have no clue. Yeah. I'm not tracking them.
But so for whatever reason, you decided to move on from HealthTap, and Miles put you in touch with me. I don't remember the details of that, or maybe.
Yeah, so I was, in one of those conversations, that I was following up with Miles, I was talking to him, and he was like, "Hey, I have a very good friend that's starting a company within the healthcare space, and I think that you should talk to him." I was like, "Well, that's great. Let's talk to him." And I remember I was, like it was probably a Saturday, because I remember that I was in the park when I first called you, and probably was with the kids there. So I called you and said, "Hey, this is Omar, like Miles, give me your contact. And this is what I do." And he told me that you're starting a healthcare startup. So if you can tell me a little bit more, and if it sounds good, we could, follow up the conversation as a formal interview. So that's what we did. And I remember that you follow up with a screen interview that I did at home, and I don't remember the problem that we did, but
yeah, it was probably what was your go-to? What was your go-to take home? Any idea?
I think that would have been like a live phone screen. I think. Okay. I don't think I sent it take home. I think it would have been a live phone screen, and it's probably I don't know, Fibonacci, and then we just see what happens. Like
Fibonacci. It was Fibonacci for
yeah, like recursive, iterative, memo-wise, like just play with it in different ways.
Yeah. It was
I mean, it's a tiny company. You can literally start with any problem. It's just an excuse to think about it and just see where the conversation goes.
Yeah. So we did that, and then you guys called me in for an interview in the offices, and then we did tic-tac-toe.
Oh yeah, that's nice. I like that as an interview question. Tic-tac-toe. We so for those who haven't read the article, at the time, like it was the very early team, and I think so it was me. I mean, I'm not traditionally CS educated, and like did my education in Australia, so like at least we've got that example of someone who's not set up to be good at computer science. But otherwise, one of the co-founders is like a Stanford grad focusing in systems, like a CS grad focusing in systems. And then I think we'd hired probably Avik, who was a Berkeley grad at that point, or was Avik just after?
No. I was the first engineering non-founder hire, right. and then we hired Avik.
Avik was the next. Yeah, so it was like internally there was a question of like, is this? He's very junior, and we hadn't heard of bootcamps previously. Like I hadn't heard of bootcamps until Miles just happened to be working at one. And I mean, I guess they weren't really around. Like Dev Bootcamp was more or less the first. Hi.
Hi.
I'm gonna just waiting for my little girls to show up too. Yeah, so we just like didn't know what to expect, I guess. And we were like, well, we've come up with an interview process that should work. Like it should distinguish capable people from those who we don't want to hire. And so we had to kind of trust the process. And we're like, well, I guess we're hiring Omar.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and so then the context, I guess we set this context as you started, Omar. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's basically like we're hiring you based on not your current abilities, but our expectation that you're going to grow into like a broader capability set.
Yeah. Often, you've always been very straightforward, and you were also very straightforward at that time. And yeah, you made it very clear. It's like, hey, you are very junior. You don't have a lot of experience, and you don't know much what you're doing. But we see potential on kind of like the way you're thinking and the way that you're approaching problems.
No, it's interesting from a hiring manager perspective. Sometimes you would hear or expect them to say, I just want someone who can hit the ground running. Or if someone is going to like be in a growth state, do I have time? Do we have capacity to train someone up to this level? But I think if you were able to detect that, Omar, this person is hungry to learn and they've got the habits to learn, they've got a personal tutor, they've got their own Aristotle on the side. This is great. So I think it's just really cool, Oz, that you were able to recognize that and like sort of allow that growth to happen there. And Omar, good job making it known that you were a growth mindset person. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, it worked out.
Yeah.
The growth mindset thing is funny, right? Like I think the classic joke is like either you have a growth mindset or you don't. It's like you can like, how do you get out of a fixed mindset? Yeah, so like being able to say like it's not only that we want people with a growth mindset, but we cannot grow them into a growth mindset necessarily. Makes it easier to say yes to people like Omar. But I mean, we're also a startup, and like it's hard to convince people to come if they've got a lot of experience and have like substantial comp expectations. And there's always, I mean, we did hire those people as well. But like as a startup, you're obviously casting the net wider and seeing more of a diverse set of capabilities in people than if you're like hiring into a machine that takes a very well-defined person at a well-defined stage of their lives and like taking them to L4 or whatever. Different kind of hiring proposition.
In the article, was this the point where the daily routine applied? Oz, you listed a daily routine. Is this at Vita Health? Is that where you did that routine? And do you mind describing it for everyone?
Yeah.
And apologies if I misremembered or took artistic license or something. Feel free to just correct what I misremembered.
No, I'm an early morning person, so I wake up very early. And when I was working with Oz, like I was a bit more deliberate on that habit. So I was waking up particularly early. I would say like 4 a.m. And then I would
some people let me just explain this for people listening. There is a 4 a.m. It is much like 4 p.m. but usually most mortals will sleep through it. There is a 4 in the morning as well. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, so at that point I woke up and then I studied for probably a couple of hours, an hour and a half, depending on the day, right? And sometimes we were studying books, or I was studying books. Sometimes I was working because kind of like the problem was appealing enough to work and not study. Sometimes I was studying articles, reading something different. And then I did a little bit of exercise in the morning, and then I had breakfast with the family, and then I would go to the office. And that was my morning routine. And then when I went home in the evening, I had a more chill routine, and I was like only take care of the family, and then go sleep early.
Yeah, like what,
And
7:30 is what I would expect to hear.
no, a bit later, more like 8:39.
Oh, right.
Um,
Okay.
so I could get a good number of hours of sleep, and then start over again.
So
Then
one aspect of this story is like, if you consistently study for an hour or two every morning, you are just on a totally different trajectory to everybody else in the industry who doesn't study whatsoever, like puts almost zero effort into their self-improvement, like put aside their career progression or whatever, like they're actually increasing their abilities. Basically, nobody ever does that in the industry. Like, it's a rounding error, the number of people who actually intentionally do that. And you were doing that very consistently, for at least an hour a day, sometimes a couple of hours a day. So one way of looking at the story is like, just be consistent and you will learn and grow. But then there's the other way of looking at the story, which is like, what enabled you to be consistent? What drove you to be consistent? Like, why were you able to achieve consistency when we all kind of know that we ought to be consistent?
well, I think that at the end I was very interested on the problems that I felt that I should know, like I should learn and get better at. And then the other thing is, like, honestly, I felt that I was very behind, and I didn't have the luxury to be behind for a long time, right? So at some point you
Do you
need to
mean
speed
like,
up.
did you mean behind like the average software engineer, behind like the people you were working with at the time, or what?
Well, yeah, probably the people I was working with, but it was within that statement is within the context of my software engineering capabilities and my software engineering understanding, and basically the understanding that I thought at that time I needed to have to succeed in my career as a software engineer. So that's what I felt, and then I also found the problems like very interesting to learn about and to study and to understand. And then the other thing is that at that time I was very focused on kind of like family and work and improving as a software engineer and a little bit of health and nothing else. And then I had what I view as ample time to study. So in that sense, I never felt that it was a shortage of time to study, just because I was focused on just a couple of things.
Well, I mean, that's interesting because you have your day job, you have your family, and you are finding time to study, and you're saying, well, that's ample time. Other people, when they look at their day job and their family, they're like, oh, I don't even have enough time to give to my family, or I don't have enough time to give to my day job.
Yeah.
Why do you think that you were in a situation where you felt like you had ample time and other people run out of time? Do you have a sense of like what other people are spending their time on, or are they just doing family wrong? Like, are they
I
not
don't
getting
know.
like valuable family time or something? What's going on?
One thing I tell you is that like I don't have a TV, so we don't watch TV. So that's one of the things that I don't do and I didn't do back in the day. But yeah, I can only speak for the things that I do. I cannot speak for the things that other people do.
You can watch TV
Maybe,
on your
yeah.
phone, by the way. So
You can watch
I hope
TV.
that doesn't ruin your life.
No, it won't.
It's
Now I
just not
watch.
that engaging though. I mean, it's a reasonable thing to say. I mean, we also don't have a TV, and I've debated like getting a TV and what impact it would have on the kind of family dynamic. And I think having a big thing that you can just turn on and it becomes a default behavior to like spend hours in front of it. It is
Yeah,
very different to like the intentional act of taking out the laptop or whatever and watching something with the kids. It's not.
the default is the dangerous thing. Like, for example, now like we watch a little bit of soccer, but it's very intentional. It's very deliberate, right? And it only happens on the weekends. So it's kind of intentional, deliberate, and kind of self-contained. So that leaves a lot of time for a lot of things.
I feel like also you being intentional about your commute gave you some time, because other people like have a driving commute and they listen to podcasts or something and pretend that they're learning something from it, but really that's just another form of having a TV. It's just the TV in your car that speaks instead of shows you things. Whereas you took the train and use some of that time at least to consume.
Yeah. Sometimes we were like, I was building like side projects and use the time to keep building. Sometimes it was like short articles, or I was in the middle of the book, or reading a chapter or two. So I
So
also added up.
All that adds up, huh?
All that adds up.
The Oz, you were making a point earlier. I just wanted to share how universal this advice is for if you put in the time, you'll be surprised what happens. One of the things I've been doing, Oz knows this, but over the last year or probably 3 years, I've been trying to get better at fiction writing. And I've read all these books on advice from authors. And the universal advice is every morning, wake up, go put your butt in that seat, grab a pen, grab your typewriter, whatever, and just write some words. If you write 500 words a day, you're going to have a novel. It doesn't have to be a good novel, but you're going to have a novel in a couple months, which is, it's just universally, no matter what, you just putting in that time. And in my case, I ended up with a pretty bad novel, but I'm working on the editing. So
that's
but the bad novel, just like the spaceship blowing up, like it's part of the process,
yes.
right? You can't expect your first novel to be fantastic. Right? Anyone who tells you that is lying. Or they learn from writing other things that are close enough to being their first novel. It's just the process.
Are you still waking up at 4 a.m.?
No, not that early. I still wake up with no timer, which is a good achievement. But not that early. Maybe like between 5:30 and 6 is when I wake up.
And what is the sort of self-study mode now? Are you still actively picking up new textbooks? And Oz, I don't know if I jumped the gun on the narrative arc here, but I'm curious to see if the consistency has remained consistent.
I'm spending less time studying and more time focused on understanding how to solve some of the problems that we have, like in the company and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I spend my cycles now.
It's been 8 years, so you're allowed to take the foot off the computer science pedal.
No, but do you still feel the imposter syndrome of feeling like you have to catch up to everyone else who studied for 4 years? Tell me you feel it or you don't.
No, I don't.
You don't. Okay.
No, I don't. At this point,
you can escape imposter syndrome. That's good to hear.
Yeah, you can. You have to write a lot of specs, but you can.
So subsequently in your career, I mean, sadly, we're not allowed, because you have the kind of role. Maybe I'm not even allowed to say this, but because you have a kind of role where it's important to not talk about the details of the role. We cannot talk about the details of the role. But putting that aside, over the last 7-8 years, as you progress in your career, what are the early habits that you've maintained, at least kind of structurally? And do you feel like that's set you apart from the other engineers at the companies that you've worked at? How do you find yourself how do you feel like you compare now to a self-taught engineer or a traditionally educated engineer or a standard engineer? What is that? How do you feel about yourself in comparison?
Well, generally speaking, I feel very good. But for your earlier question about structurally, what are the things that I've done kind of in the workplace or in my career? I think that I've never seen my job as a fixed set of actions or things or systems that I needed to kind of obtain or develop. I've always been very interested to understand what are kind of the problems that the company has or the company is facing, regardless whether the problem is within my team, within my org, at arm's length, or me, or on the other side of the org. And then trying to figure out if I had an edge on helping on those problems, and if I could help on those problems. A lot of the time, like, you realize that it's way too out of scope for you to even give a hand, and you would get in the way. But some other times it's like, okay, I'm gonna try here. I think I have a couple things that I can add to the conversation at least, and see where it leads. And then one thing leads to a different thing, and then opportunities arise within those companies. So if anything, is I've never seen my job as a closed or fixed set of um, things that I need to do, or check boxes that I need to check. And I was always trying to figure out, or I always try to figure out, if there's anything interesting for me to get my hands dirty.
How have you felt as it relates to mentorship within the workplace? Have you been able to create junior Omars? And is the advice the folks in your team that they have to wake up at 4 a.m. and take an hour-long Caltrain even if they don't need to take the train? Like, how do you? Because I feel like my inclination is like, you should do it the way I did it, but maybe that won't work for everyone. So what's been your general advice patterns for people who want to be more like you?
So, my general advice is, in companies, there's always very smart people that are inclined to teach or offer mentorship without even a formal program. That doesn't need to be a formal program or formal relationship. Like, for someone to grow in a company, the best thing that they can do is, if they're inherently motivated, is spot out who that smart people are that want to help and that want to kind of mentor people through their careers, and extract the max out of them. Like, that's what I did with Oz. That's what I've been doing in Rollicoot, the company that I work for, and that's what I'm gonna do in the future. And some people kind of have approached me in a similar way, and then, like, at that point is for me to give back. But I usually don't offer like very prescriptive recommendations on what to do. It's more of a inherent motivation genuine motivation to keep on learning and keep on improving.
I feel like everyone knows that it'd be valuable to have mentors, and then very few people end up with a kind of relationship, whether they call it mentor or not. Like, they functionally don't get mentorship, despite knowing that they should. And people ask me specific things like, how do I get a mentor at this company or whatever? What do you think that you did, or brought to that relationship, or what, like, how is it that you managed to establish? I mean, with you and me, it was just obvious. Like, we're a very small team, and we were constantly scared that the company just wouldn't work out, and so we were just doing everything that we could to be as collectively capable as possible. But you set up a relationship with Miles. You got good mentorship with us together, and it seems like you just continue to do that for your whole career. Like, how did you actually, sure, you identify the right person? Maybe is it an aspect of identifying the person who's going to be amenable to that relationship, or how do you present yourself to these people, or how do you like get this kind of dynamic established?
Yeah, I think that it first of all, it has to happen very natural. Like this type of things or relationship cannot be forced. Like, when I was working with you, Oz, like, it was a similar story. Like, hey, I was very junior, you're very senior, but you wanted to teach, right? Like, you wanted to share your knowledge. So I detected that, like, and you're very smart. So I we established a relationship in which it was not only work relationship. It was like, hey, this is the thing that I've been looking into. What do you think? Do you think it's a reasonable pattern? This, that, all that stuff. So I was adding to the conversation with you because you wanted to teach, and you added a lot to me because I wanted to learn, right? Same with in any other company. Like, you have to spot like the smart people, or I've tried to spot like the smart people that really want you to improve. And at the end of the day, like, the common goal is usually something within the company, right? There's a problem in the company, or there's something that needs to get fixed, and there's like this genuine interest to align incentives and figure out the people that will help you get there. I've never gone to someone and say, "Hey, I want you to be my mentor." Like that's not how this works. It's more like, "Hey, I want to solve this problem, and this is the way that I've thought about it. But I just want to bounce a couple of ideas with you and see what you think." And then they will unload all what they have in their minds, and that's kind of the way that you get mentorship, right? Like you try to solve a problem, that you're probably like 60-70%, or you're in the ballpark, and then you go to the smartest kid in the room, and then you tell me, okay, now tell me a solution and get me to 100%, and you do that like repeatedly and consistently, and that's how you get into a mentorship relationship, even though there's nothing established as
you don't want to DTR. You don't want to define the relationship, because that
you don't want
ruins
to
the
define
magic.
the relationship.
Yeah.
That ruins it. Yeah, that ruins it. And then the other thing is that it doesn't need to be on a fixed cadence, right? Like problems or genuine interest about something. There are periods of time where there's a burst of it, and then every day you're talking about something new, and there's like weeks or maybe months in which there's nothing new, so there's no need to push it. And when it comes natural and it's very, very genuine, then the thing rolls.
I think that when we talk about showing up with 60 to 70% of a solution, I feel like that's key. It's like we have a shared problem, and I've made an earnest attempt to solve it, and you're gonna like help me hopefully to get the rest of the way there. But I'm kind of doing a lot of your work, and you're gonna do some of my work, because it's like shared work. But you're not showing up saying like, I have made no earnest attempts to solve this problem, and can you take me the whole way there? Or having something vague like, I want some professional help or professional advice or something. It's like, concretely, I've made it this far. Can you help take it further?
Yeah. The other way, like, hey, I haven't spent time on this. Tell me what I need to do. That will never work, and that will actually kill the relationship. It's like, dude, I put hours, hundreds and thousands of hours to understand that, and you want me now to bring you up to speed when you haven't put the reps? This is not how it works, right? So there needs to be an honest and genuine interest to solve something, and then people would be more than happy to share their learning, their understanding.
So I thought
I wonder how much as well. Sorry,
I'm sort of circling the wagon here. I was going to say, I thought we could close with everyone's favorite Chat GPT prompt technique, which is actually, that is not how I want to end. I don't want to talk about that. But I did just, my close was, Omar, I think I had met you once before, but it's been awesome and inspiring to hear this. Oz, also, I'm inspired that you said you were going to write an article, and you wrote the article. So good job. And
it only took me 3 months, but
yeah. But if you write a couple words every morning, it can happen.
There.
Again.
Yeah, well, thank you guys for having me on your podcast.
Amazing.
Absolute pleasure, Omar.
See you around.
Catch you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.